So as a cover designer, I truly believe that the theme is the best place to start. I think a great theme can truly capture the culture of the student body and lead the design to the finish line. As an example, if a designer is designing a fictional novel cover, the story itself will drive the design choices. A theme will serve as the story for the yearbook cover, and the students will serve as the story for the theme. Now, I don't think you need to have a theme. I don't think it's necessary, but I think it will definitely elevate the design choices that you make. So what happens if there is no theme? I think the majority of well-designed yearbook covers will have some sort of message that plays off the visual elements, or more importantly, here, sets the stage for the visuals. Think of a good song, or a good novel cover, or a good movie poster. A lot of times it's just the tagline sets the stage for everything else that follows visually. I think this message can exude a tone for the book, and everything else can follow suit. So no theme, come up with a strong message. Now, when it comes to yearbook design, there are no rules. It doesn't matter what the school down the street is doing. You do not need to have a message, and you do not need to have a tagline. As long as the person designing the cover has a pretty basic knowledge of the 7 design fundamentals, which kind of encompass all design. That includes lines and shapes and textures, form, space, color, and value. Even using some of those together can really help you build a beautiful cover out of very little. So let's explore some of those. So our first design fundamental is lines. Now, lines are typically borders, and they can be dotted and they can be brush strokes. As long as they're a border or some sort of line, then that's the design fundamental of lines. In this example here, you can see that we have outlined the text. Now, the text is broken, kind of like a grunge, so I just did that same thing around the outline itself to kind of help thematically. And of course, we have a border going around the entire design. So your eye kind of funnels into this area here and goes straight to the text. In this example here from Atlanta Adventist Academy, their theme, or their message, I should say, is connectivity or connected. So just using that word itself, we've assumed, well, the students wanted to feel connected through online learning in 2021. So we went with a artistic polygon design here, and I used all these dots to represent the students, and then we had the lines connecting them. So it doesn't have to always border text. It can be the design itself. In this example, I think it worked out pretty well. Let's talk about shapes. The 3 categories of shapes are geometric, organic, and here we have abstract, which is like a mascot or an icon. This cover has a lot of different things going on, and we're going to get back to this one in a second. So this school wanted some blueprints in their background. So that is geometric shapes. From that theme idea, we built building firm foundations as the message. So the theme and the message together helped build all the geometric shapes into a cohesive theme. Now this cover here has a nice organic background because their message was in a nutshell. So we had some nuts falling from a tree. To make this appealing, we did some nice digital watercolor, and even the background is built off of brush strokes along with the text itself, because that is also an abstract shape. Now here we have an icon which is abstract as well. Because we have abstract on the foreground and the background is a different category of shapes, they both kind of make a juxtaposition and push each other into different frames of the design itself. So we have the background, organic, and the foreground is abstract. So it works really well together. Now let's take a look at this here. What we see here is geometric shapes. Now when we start to add this text to it here, we start to be left with a visual of a 70s poster or a 70s t-shirt. So why does that work so well? It's because the shape of the text is one of the most important design elements in a design. If I was to get rid of all this text again and retype it in and say Times New Roman, it wouldn't make much sense. You'd say, well, I think the background is, you know, a 70s poster or a 70s something or other, but we can't be sure. But when we add the font styles to it, which is a 70s style font, then we can be certain that this is supposed to be something from either the early 80s, maybe the late 70s or mid 70s. So here comes the sun is the message, and we wanted this to be, you know, kind of a parting of the clouds, because the students were starting to see a break in the pandemic. They were starting to get back to school. So visually, we built around that message. So all together, it all makes a cohesive design. So thanks to shapes, all these different designs work well. Okay, so the third category is texture. And texture within a cover design can add depth and light to the surface of objects and give the feeling of movement and just an overall general feel. So this cover here, we use brush strokes. And we wanted this to be represented as really good silver. So what they did is they used a varnish over the top that had a texture to it. So you can actually feel the brush strokes. Okay, so texture can be digital or it can be in post-production on the press. Now, let's look at this cover for instance here. The message is we've got grit. Now grit to me is fortitude and guts and moxie and tenacity, perseverance. All those things kind of make you feel like you've been through battle. Now, how do we show that digitally? This to me is very clean. It just doesn't have that feel to it. So by simply adding a little bit of grunge texture with a brush, and now it feels like there's some spunk to it, right? Like we've been through something together as a team. So a little bit of texture goes a long way. Now, if we look at this last cover here, it's a letter jacket. With a letter jacket, there is textures all over the place. Now, of course, this book is printed flat, just on a matte surface. So it's all visual, it's all done digitally. On the cashmere patch itself, there's going to be texture to it. We just had a little bit of Photoshop texture to it. The jacket itself has a little bit of texture in the material. The pockets look like leather. So you can see all that stuff here. So all that data, visual data together with the collars and the edge of the jacket here, all make it feel like an actual jacket. Just by using a little bit of shading, a little bit of texture, and the entire design just comes together. Okay, let's talk about form. Now, form is the way that we can build the sense of dimension within an object. You can use shading to pull things forward, shading to set things back. We can use lines in different shapes. And of course, color values. You know, as the object reaches the light, the value of the color gets a little bit lighter. As it goes away to the background, it gets darker. Using some of these objects and different principles and concepts of form can really set the foreground and the background apart, giving your book a beautiful sense of dimension. Okay, so the next fundamental is space. Now, space is the way that we can create the correct alignment and spacing between all objects on the page to make sure that there's just enough air. Now, not every design requires a lot of air, but designs that have a few elements on the page can always benefit from having the correct amount of space. It's kind of the difference between misaligned clutter and allowing the viewers their eyes to kind of hit the correct places on the page. So this mock-up that I just quickly made is kind of a mess. So I'm going to bring the Bulldog's word all the way up to the top, okay? Because I think that's kind of the first thing we want to see. I'm going to bring the Bulldog down, and I'm going to shrink him just a little bit because he's just a little bit too big for my tastes. That's probably about right there. I'm going to bring him up just a little bit. Now, the word Bulldogs is just too big because it's hitting the margins of the page. Oops, wrong layer. So I'm going to shrink this just a little bit. Give it some air left to right. Now I'm going to take all of these and just center them so they're all aligned correctly. Now you can align everything down the center or at least have that as a starting point. I'm going to have that as a starting point. I'm going to take the tagline I'm going to work on that. Now this tagline has a lot of tracking between each letter. Yes, it's set at 1,000, so I'm going to drive that a lot closer together. I'm going to take a guide and just align it along the edge of the word bulldogs and bring the tagline to align with that. I'm going to take another one on the other side. And I'm going to get this tracking between the letters here to be a little smaller. It looks pretty good. And now I'm going to take my date and let's say I'm going to drop it below. The date is just too big for my taste. I'm going to shrink this down. This still doesn't feel right to me, so I'm going to take the tagline and the date. I'm going to drive it way down towards the bottom. To me, it's like a bookend. Okay. I'm going to take my bulldogs and kind of mimic that space. I'm just going to eyeball it for this. There we go. And now I'm going to find the center of this space, just rough center. And there. So within just a few moments and a few adjustments, this mock cover looks a lot better just by adding space. So we have a lot of space on the back, and now we have appropriate space above and below each piece of text. So now our eyes know exactly where to fall and they kind of cascade down the page. So let's talk about the last two fundamentals, which are kind of tied together, and they are color and value. Now color can be cool colors or it can be warm colors, but whatever you decide to choose, those colors will be one of the first things that a viewer will feel by looking at that cover, and it will immediately create a sense of mood or tone. Now value of the color is kind of how light or dark that color will be. So using similar shades like black or little value changes can make a design seem really flat. Adding contrast by using a wide varieties of value can give contrast and build dimensions and assist with the other fundamental, which was form. So if we take a look at this cover right here, just a mock-up of a cover, it is a very studious looking cover. It's classy and classic. This could be on a leatherette cover. This could be done with gold foil. So it makes it look really, really rich. Now, if we take some of these colors and we start to mess with them and change them, immediately, let's say we go with the purple. Immediately, it doesn't seem so rich anymore. This just has a very, very different feel just by choosing a different color. Even if you were to use purple foil here, it just wouldn't look the same. Now, in saying that, I could take the same background and keep the gold foil and mess with the value. It just doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel as rich without that nice contrast on the back. Okay? Of course, I can take that gold and make the background gold, and you can see that doesn't work whatsoever. So utilizing the correct shades of the color, the correct value of the color, and the correct color in itself can really enhance your design.